Oh, wait, it says we're live now.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Last week, we spoke with Farron Dozier, who is the owner of the Oxnard Orcas and the founder of What's the Count for sickle cell prevention, trait prevention. Tonight, we're speaking with Oxnard's favorite resident that makes his very informative videos, and you can catch all of his videos at underscore GT Pro on YouTube. All that information is through hours and hours of him going through multiple documents from both sides and trying to bring you the most unbiased information possible. I know some residents don't like that, but it is the best way to be able to get 100% accurate information. He is currently the chair of the Fremont South neighborhood, sorry, and the second vice chair on the INCEO. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Gabe Teran.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Gabe, for coming back to the show. You are part of our election night coverage panel, and a lot of great feedback. So thank you again for coming on. And but this time it's a little bit different. We're gonna find out a little bit more about you, and then unpack a little bit of what the November 3rd election has brought us so far. So let's just start with, who is Gabe Teran? What motivated you in the first place to get involved with the city?
All right. Well, when you said that we were going to talk about the election, I was totally on board. But we're going to talk about me. That wasn't part of the deal, man. No, I'm kidding. All right. So I appreciate you asking that. So what really motivated me to get involved was back in 2013. Um, I got the flyer for our neighborhood council meeting, and I've lived in Fremont South almost my entire life. I lived in Wilson for a little while, and that's the picture behind me that you can see on the virtual background over the old St. John's Hospital. And when I in the year 2000, I moved back to Fremont South. I was just about to get out of high school, and I've been here ever since. But that year, I had a flyer show up to my door, and I'd always seen them and thought about going to them, and I never was able to get there, or whatever happened. But I finally went, and it was great. I really enjoyed being able to meet my neighbors, talk about issues that were important to the neighborhood, and have an opportunity to come to the table and be involved in the process. And I'll tell you that we had an election meeting that night, and it was like my first meeting. I was elected the member at large. And so one of my first assignments was to look at this new thing called nextdoor.com. And I had to come back and report out on it. And so I went to a couple more meetings after that, and then my neighborhood, we weren't officially meeting for a couple of years after that. And back in 2018, I realized, like, you know what, we should get things back together and get things rolling again. And so I went ahead and did that, and got Fremont South back on the roster again as one of the active neighborhood councils in the city. And by then, I had a number of years now under my belt for planning and facilitating meetings and coordinating project work. And so it just really translated well into being a neighborhood council chair. And so that was kind of my initial personal level of getting involved. On the professional side, my job actually has me working with young people to be advocates for positive community change. And I've done that in almost every city of the county. And I've gone to city council meetings, to commission meetings, to all these different, local government meetings for our local electeds, and had to show students like how this works and how they can use that as a way to advocate for what they see as important change for themselves and their communities. But I wasn't getting involved myself, like in my personal life. So I realized at one point, like, well, who am I, like, doing this professionally, but not speaking up for things or learning about things in my own personal life in the city I live in and I've lived in almost my entire life. So that's kind of what led to it.
Awesome. Um, so you say your professional life has you working with our youth. You're visiting multiple cities throughout the county. what motivated you to start creating these videos? Because many of your videos have been shared across social media, not by only everyday residents, but even some organizations have also shared your videos. And most recently, this election cycle, many of your videos were shared by labor union groups, residents, because it was very informative. What led you to say, you know what, I'm going to start creating videos and really break it down for the everyday person?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because the honest truth behind it, I got to give all of my props to my grandfather. He he was the first generation to grow up here in Oxnard. He and my grandmother, they both went to the schools here in Oxnard, and my grandmother went to Oxnard High School, and my grandfather, he only went up to like and completed eighth grade, and then some of ninth grade, and from there he went back to work in the fields, work in the packing houses in Colonia. Then he ended up starting his own business, driving a truck, and he had his a truck. He would haul asphalt, haul gravel. He did that for 40 years, and finally was able to retire. And the neighborhood council meeting I brought up, when we went, I invited him to go too. I was like, hey, why don't you go? Let's check this out. And he lives in the same neighborhood here as I do. And afterwards, we talk about it, and he would ask me, so when they said this, like, what did they mean? And I said, well, this is what they were talking about. This is what the city was presenting on. This is what they mentioned. And, I explained it to him. And since then, years later, he would still ask me, like, hey, so, they're going to dig a well at Campus Park. What does that mean? Like, explain it to me. And I would just say, okay, well, here's what they're doing. Here's why they're doing it. Same things with propositions for each election cycle and the measures, who the candidates were. And I realized that I with my grandfather, I really enjoy him trying to understand everything and appreciate that he trusted me to explain it to him. And so I realized that with all these things that were going on in social media, people sharing information that sometimes wasn't fully accurate, and I say, well, no, the staff report for the city council meeting said this, and correcting misinformation or validating what was correct. And I said, I could just create like these videos where I just talk about the report, what's coming up, or the city council agenda, and just have people understand, just like how I was talking to my grandfather, like, here's what's coming up, here's what's going on, here's what this means, here's what this means. If they vote no, this, if they vote yes, this. And that's how I started it. Just literally low tech, my cell phone on like a little tripod that I bought on Amazon, and just talking about it. And then I edit them and try and make them more palatable. They were still way too long because I talk way too much. And that's kind of how that started. And I realized that I enjoyed doing it. I enjoy giving that information out and having people be engaged and informed about what's going on in our city.
So let me ask you, because you've been doing this for a while, how long does it take you to, one, record, and then two, edit your videos so that they're not so extremely long? Because the attention span of many people, it's only a few minutes. So how long does it take you to go through from start to finish?
So if you want to count my research time too, reading the staff reports, going through each agenda, seeing what's coming up, and now the agendas are 12 days ahead of time. So that gives me more time to read them, but it's also more agendas to look at. But it's easily just the number I usually see is about a half hour to an hour of prep or recording and editing for each like minute of video time that you actually see in my videos. Now that's drastically changed with the software I got for the animated videos I made, but even that is still a lot of time because I have no experience in doing that, and they have some great tutorials for it, but there's a lot of prep time behind the scenes that happens that I truly appreciate now when I see these really good videos that people put out there on lots of different topics.
So let me ask you, because you do these videos, you've been doing them for a while. Now, this election had a measure on there that was pretty much going to ask staff to do that very same thing of creating videos of their presentations and posting them online so that the public's able to really review them. how much staff time do you really believe is going to be consumed by, prepping, by um, presenting, and then editing whatever needs to be edited if they made a mistake or so forth?
Yeah. So Measure M is an interesting one because there's so many layers to it. That one alone about recording their presentations and then putting it on. The argument I heard from a proponent was, well, they're going to be rehearsing anyways. Why don't they just film themselves rehearsing their presentation? And I don't know how staff for the city of Oxnard works. I, as an individual, I do a lot of presentations for work as well. I don't sit at my desk or stand in a conference room and like rehearse word for word what I'm going to do. I have a sense and an outline for how long it's going to take. And maybe that's just me. But if I had to pre-record it ahead of time, it's different than when you're presenting it in person because when you're in person, you're presenting there at that podium, like that's it. You're in real time. You got to get through it. You got to do a good job. You have to get the point across. When we're recording, you have no matter how good you are, my observation is that you're going to talk and you're going to say, no, wait, I didn't mean to say that. Okay, let me do this again. Right. And I just feel like that's inevitably going to happen. When we look at the staff time dedicated to it, if they even stuck to my thing of having to do all their prep time and recording and editing, if it was a half hour to an hour for every minute of video, well, I mean, is that a good use of their time? Let's also remember that our staff right now with our city, prior to this election, was incredibly thin. Are they going to do it themselves? Is our non-existent PIO staff going to record it and edit it for them? Is there our thin IT staff like what's the plan? Because that plan wasn't laid out who's going to do that in Measure M. Let alone the fact that it had multiple other parts. Like everybody is guaranteed at least 3 minutes or guaranteed 3 minutes for comments. That no meeting can start till 5 o'clock. All of those things in their totality, like any one, like if they were on a measure, like, okay, I'll consider that. But all of them together, if you don't like one of them, or any one of them is going to be negatively or will negatively affect the way the city or the meetings operate, it's too bad. When you vote for that measure, you get everything. It's all or nothing with that measure. And so that's kind of how that turned out. But that's my response for the video thing is it's going to be interesting to see how they figure that one out. And I know they were looking at challenging that one in court in the even interview we did with the city manager. Um, it's just I don't know how productive it's going to be, and there's so many other like rabbit holes you can go down as far as how do you access those? What if someone doesn't have access to internet at home? What if they don't speak English? Like, what's the plan for that?
So you're married, you have kids. How much time are they allowing you? When I say that, because I'm married and I have kids, how much time do they allow you to really like hone in and focus on your studying of staff reports or opposition reports, to prep, to record, to edit? Because as you outline it, it's a lot of time.
Yeah, I will say that the recording, a lot of the older videos you'll see that I did a year ago, year and a half ago, you'll see that they're usually in the late afternoon. If you see in my dining room table, you see where the sun is and everything. And it's usually, it would be like a Sunday or a Saturday, and maybe they'd go out and go to the park or something and give me about 2 hours to record stuff. Otherwise, if you see them at night, it's because I did it after everybody went to bed. So like 9, 10 o'clock at night, I would start recording it. Otherwise, I've been especially during the pandemic, I've had to really kind of reevaluate how much time I was dedicating to work, into this city stuff, and really try to spend a lot more time with my family. And that's the one plus is everybody goes to sleep at some point, and so I can stay up and do what I need to do after that.
So, how does your wife feel that you're so involved with the city? You're creating these videos, you're really doing a really good service for the community on educating them on topics, on issues that are occurring in the city.
When you phrase it like that, I'm gonna have to play this clip for her that you said that it was positive and it's helping the city. No, I'm just kidding. No, she's super supportive of it and knows that I've always really wanted to improve like our community. The work I do I do it because I want to make a difference for young people, for the current generation, the next generation, the communities they live in, for our county of Ventura. I mean, I didn't get into this job to get rich, obviously, but it's incredibly fulfilling. But it's just always where my interest has been in making some kind of positive change. And so in that sense, she's always been very supportive and has been my biggest fan. And I have to give it to her completely. That I don't know how much patience, how much patience is allotted, but I'm glad she's had more than that at least.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, we're going to go back just a little bit. You were born and raised here
Yeah.
in the city. You went to local schools. Which high school did you graduate from? And I don't want to turn this into a rivalry, but if you went to the challenging school of mine, then I don't know, maybe we end this interview right here.
So I actually I did go to school here. I went to Driffle, to Curran, and then my mom remarried, and I did live in Camarillo for a few years. So I went to middle school out there, and then to Camarillo High School, and then to Oxnard High School here as well. So I don't know which high school you went to, Daniel, but you look like a Wainimi, a Viking to me. So
Yes, Viking for life.
all
Class
right,
of
I know him when I see
'07.
him. So
Okay, that's awesome. Let's talk about the election.
real quick before you do that, my wife
Yes.
also graduated from Wainimi, so let me just throw that out there. So no
Oh,
hard feelings to all the Wainimi alum out there.
so this is how you know what a Viking looks like. All right, I see how it is. But we, because you didn't go to CI, we can continue the
Oh,
conversation.
jeez. Wow. So
And
you guys will see me really shady in here.
this is no attack on the Raiders, but Vikings, do or die. Um, let's talk about the election because you played a pretty big role this year in the election. You led a team to create the candidate forums for the three council districts, 3, 4, and 6, the mayors, city treasurer, city clerk, including the county supervisor of the 5th district. Um, and you also created your videos talking about the measures that were also on the ballots. Um, how do you believe, not how do you believe, but how do you feel about seeing the results from election night to seeing them right now?
You know, I actually put a lot of faith into the process in our elections. It's a democracy. It's a system that has been invested in over the 200 years that we've had, this country locally. I have to trust in what the voters decide to do. However, um, when it comes to the voter initiatives, like the measures that we saw on the ballot this time, 2016's Measure M is a really good example. You can put almost anything on the ballot, and the voters have a say in it. But if it causes things to negatively affect the city, which ultimately negatively affects the residents, then those voter initiatives have the ability to be challenged in court. And my role in all of this, I look at it just like I've always looked at the city council meetings, the city initiatives that I've talked about. I certainly have my opinions on them, but I feel like I want to put the information out there for people to make an informed decision on. And when it came to the measures, when I read them, I read every single one, every single word, front and back, multiple times. And I have to say, it doesn't matter who wrote them. It doesn't matter who the author was. My grandma could have written them, and I still would have said, reading these things, I can't support these. Objectively looking at them and what they do and leading them to their logical conclusions, I can't support these. And I was also an early non-supporter of Measure E before it even had a measure attached to it. And I mentioned this in the election evening that it wasn't until I actually had to face, if this doesn't pass and if budget cuts have to continue because of COVID and the slow economy and the financial situation we were in before all of that, it was going to be a much worse situation for the residents who would have been negatively affected. And so for me, my feelings about the election are obviously I have the way that I voted, and there's looking at the results. Am I disappointed? Well, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens next, but I have to put faith that the voters looked at whatever information they could and they made a decision based on that. And that's where I feel like not just me, but people who put information out there have a responsibility to the voters to give them the information that they actually need in order to make an informed decision. If you see some of the other videos that came out in support of the voter initiative measures, those were paid political ads. And I would point that out because they use the same software I did, which I'll take that as a compliment because I did it first, just saying. But it said on the very bottom, by law, it has to state it's a paid political ad. But I don't know if people saw it that way or they truly supported it because I'm not saying I'm right all the time, but objectively looking at them, I really couldn't support any of them. And I have no problem saying if objectively they would have done good things for the city, I would have voted for them. That's just how it is.
Now, how hard is it for you to separate your own personal feelings from actually just throwing out facts to the public? I know for me, being involved with the city, sometimes I can, I'm like a runaway train sometimes. I'll throw my personal opinion out there, um, and then go back later and try to through the facts. How hard is that for you? Because again, your videos are watched by tons of residents throughout the city. Especially this election where it was shared multiple times. How hard is that for you to separate the two?
You know, I really try to just present the facts as objectively as I can. And when I talk with students about this, we provide training to students on how to work with elected officials and the importance of differentiating between what's fact and what's opinion. And if somebody tells you something, is that a fact? And can they back that up and source that and cite that? Or is it their opinion? And we have an exercise we do where we have them try and understand the difference between the two. And there's nothing wrong with opinions. And I go a step further to say nobody's opinion is wrong because that's our opinion. Like that's your opinions are formed based on your experiences and your beliefs and your level of knowledge up until that point. When we receive new information, then that's an opportunity for us to reevaluate our opinion and see if we've changed it in any way. But what I tell them, there's nothing wrong with opinions. However, facts will supersede opinions with elected officials 90% of the time. I mean, they're going to base some things on emotion or on some social decisions, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But they also like to make decisions based on what's factually there in front of them or some objective information that's going to somehow show them why this is the way that they need to consider voting as an elected body. And that's what we train students to see. And when I tell them, hey, there's nothing wrong with opinions, but it's even better if your opinion can be backed up with facts. I have no problem throwing my opinion out there if I know that I can back it up. If I'm just speaking just because I believe something, all right, but I'll lead into it saying, I believe this, or I don't have anything to back this up, but here's what I think, right? And that's just kind of where I come from. In my videos, I'll here and there I'll inject my personal stuff into that, but I will lead into it saying this is just my own thought on this, but and I'll say that.
So, how does it feel that 4 years ago, and I saw one of your Facebook posts, it's a photo of you and your wife. You guys are at the Oxnard Performing Arts Center, preparing to watch one of the candidate forums. Um, Fast forward 4 years, now you're leading these forums that just 4 years ago you watched. How did that feel for you to know that? Did you even think that 4 years from that point, from the 2016 race, that you would ever lead the candidate forums?
You know, I had no like inkling that 4 years from then that I would be, doing exactly that. And I like to think if we were still in person, those forums would have been held at council chambers or at the PAC or in some facility where the public would be welcome to come in the large numbers that we were hoping to get to be able to watch that and be able to see the candidates. And it's a great feeling to be able to be involved in that process because for me it's not about like I could put my name on it or be in charge or it's not about that. For me it's always about giving information out to the public, getting them engaged and having them get what they need to be able to make a really good decision for our local community and our local government because that's where real change happens is at the local level. And if that's the case, they should have all the information that they need in order to make those important decisions. So it felt great to be able to do that. And yeah, I seeing Google gives you these like reminders like, hey, here's where you were 4 years ago. And I saw that and I was like, oh man, that's right. And that was literally a date night for us. We went on a date to go to the candidates forums, and that's kind of where we are with our relationship. So that you'll stay together if you vote together. FYI, folks.
So I can honestly say that you're a regular party animal, date nights to a candidate forum. But okay, so I just want to make comments that you have a lot of fans out there in the community, and a lot of good comments are coming in, and
I'm glad they're good, but that's fine too. I'm good with
that. So let me ask you, because this was a comment that I saw on the advertising for this show from Mr. Nash about a scandal that you're involved in with Coco, and your resemblance to young Miguel. First of all, tell us what made you decide to take a picture with the poster from Coco? Because for me, when I first saw it, I was like, holy, that is like spot on.
So before that movie ever came out, maybe like a month, 6 weeks before it came out, I had a really good friend from Ventura County Public Health send me a text message saying, hey, you're Miguel from Coco. And I was like, what are you talking about? I hadn't seen a trailer for the movie. I had no idea what the movie was. And she sent me a picture of him playing his guitar. I said, oh my God, that is me. What's going on here? So I looked up the movie and I saw it was a Disney movie coming out on Thanksgiving that year. And I was like, what is it? Like, what's going on here? That's so crazy. And then when the movie came out, like, it was just my family, my friends, like, wow, that looks just like you. Like, oh, that's so crazy. It was like, okay. And that red Adidas sweater that I had that before the movie came out. Let me just throw that out there. That was like, it was just so surreal to me. And for me, I still am waiting for that Disney money to roll in, but I totally get it. Like everybody's gotten hard times right now, so I'm a patient person. But when we went to go see the movie finally on Thanksgiving Day, it's a tradition we started. We go see a movie on Thanksgiving. They had a cardboard cutout of him right there in the movie theater, and I said, "Oh, let me grab a picture real quick." And that's just been something I have. I think I still have it on my Instagram page as my profile picture.
Yeah, when I saw that photo, I was like, wow, that is so surreal to see that. So there's a possibility that Disney was following you, getting your style, and then I'm assuming that's how Miguel was born, right?
I guess so. I mean, if Gail grows up to be like way too into local government and getting people engaged, then I'll know there's no question about it that they use my likeness for that movie.
There you go. So let's jump into the November 3rd election. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you joined me along with Edith Bordon and Yadi Valencia in the panel where we were talking about the measures and the candidates that are running for the various offices. Based off of what you've seen in the latest elections, we saw out of the 5 measures, Measure E is ahead. But also three of the voter initiative measures are also ahead, except for Measure L, which was the merger of the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and the elected city treasurer. What are your thoughts on those?
What I was thinking about earlier, when I was just kind of mentally preparing for today's interview was I would love to hear from any of the average voters who might have voted in favor of those. I'm just interested about like, what was it that, had them go ahead and vote for those measures? Where'd they get their information? And it's just interesting to me to know what was it that led to their support for those measures. Because like I said, you had, for me, reading the 6-point font that they all had and going through them, I had to read them multiple times. I realized this is not something I can support. Um, I'll start with Measure F first of all. That one squeaked by. It was really close for a long time, and now it's still really close, a little bit ahead. And I think it's a finalized count. I don't think mathematically there's enough votes to come in to push it back to a no. And I think it says a lot that they barely passed. But I mean, I spoke with some of the other cities who also have a similar structure within their city and their building permits, and they were not portrayed the way that it was portrayed in the measure or in the forums or any of the other information that went out to the voters. And even one person who I spoke with from one of the cities, who was the architect of that measure or of that permitting process within his city, he said that this is an odd thing. Like, why would this be a voter initiative? He didn't support it. He thought this is odd that it'd be every possible permit and that it's a voter initiative because that locks it in. Like the city can't change it. They can't change any component of it unless they enhance it in some way. And even a person who wrote his for his city said this is not a good idea. And so it was just really telling to me to be able to get that information firsthand from those folks. And I don't want to like, I assume the best of intentions in everybody. I would assume the author, wanted to make some kind of positive change with the city by doing it. But objectively looking at it, like I didn't see that happening if it were to pass. And so that's my thing is like I would like to know, why did you vote for this? Not in a demeaning way, but a genuine curiosity. Like what was it that convinced you that this deserved a yes vote from you?
And what about the other measures? Well, we kind of already touched on Measure M, but Measure N, which dealt with the city's 2008 measure, Measure O, which was a half-cent sales tax increase that has gone through every single process to pay for everything, to pay for positions, to pay for fire stations, to pay for equipment. What are your thoughts about that? That initially out the gate, Measure N was already ahead with the yes votes.
Yeah, Measure N. When I read these measures already a year ago now, when they were submitted to the city clerk's office, that was one of the first ones I jumped on to make a video about. Because right away when I read it, I realized this is not mathematically possible. How, like, there's no way that we can fund roads to this level to get to this quality of roads in order to meet the deadlines that are imposed by this measure. And looking at it, it sounds very enticing, like a cursory view, where it's like, oh yeah, well we either dedicate funding to the roads, or you're going to lose this funding that we said we were going to give you for roads. But like you said, Daniel, Measure O, when people say, well, how was it spent? They misspent the money. It's like, no, I mean, I'm not going to argue. I heard the city manager say it, and I say the same thing. I wouldn't argue that it was mismanaged, with some of the stuff it went toward, but majority of it went to exactly what we voted it to go in toward. And when people say, well, where's the money going? Where's it spent? Well, go to the goddamn city website and look at there's a Measure O section of the website where you can review all of the documents and what it's spent on and where it went. And to me, it's just unfortunate that people were kind of, I don't want to use the word tricked, but they saw like something, obviously roads is something that everybody sees, and maybe that's why they went for it. But like I said, like it's not mathematically possible. If we had, and the proponents will say, oh, well, you can use any funding for roads, not just Measure O. Yeah, if we had that funding, we'd be using it. Like the roads would already be fixed. Do you think that they just want to keep them like that in certain areas because that's just fun to do? Like no, like this is where we are. This is a level of funding that we have to be able to maintain and fix them. Now that being said, um, I will say that with Measure O also, I kept posing, hey, if they did dedicate Measure O toward fixing roads in addition to whatever funding they can get, like that's essentially like defunding the two fire stations in South Oxford, right? Go look at the Measure O funding. Go look at how much goes toward Station 8 over on Rose Avenue and Station 2 over on Pleasant Valley, which is only open because of Measure O. It would be closed to this day after the last fiscal year if it weren't for Measure O funding keeping it open. And I mean, talk about disproportionately affecting a community. South Oxnard already has so many challenges, and they deserve so much for us to just take away from them in order to have nicer roads in other parts of the city. It doesn't add up to me.
Now, moving on to the candidates, we saw District 3, 4, and 6. District 3, which is the northeast portion, District 4, which is the central core, and then District 6, which is the one of two South Oxnard council districts. Did they play out the way that you thought it? Let me rewind. What does the results tell you? Because to me, those results say that the current incumbents were doing something right, that residents had enough confidence to keep them in that office. What did those results tell you?
I would agree with that. That if incumbents keep getting voted in, I mean, does that mean that people believe they're doing a good job and they should continue to be given opportunities to continue that job? Or does it mean that people aren't paying attention and they just see a familiar name and they vote for them? Either way, um, well, I should say, if you go for the latter opinion that like, oh yeah, people just don't pay attention, they just vote for the incumbent. Well, that's not really putting a whole lot of faith in the voters that they did their homework or that they looked into it on some level to know who to vote for, right? I'm sure there are outliers out there who like will say, yeah, so and so had a really cool sign for the lawns. I like that, so they're gonna get my vote. Or so and so went to high school with my cousin, and I'm gonna vote for them because of that. I'm sure that happens, but I have to put my faith in the voters that they um, they had opportunities such as our forums. They had opportunities like the voters guide. They had opportunities to learn about who our candidates were and make an informed decision on that. They say it's very difficult to unseat an incumbent, especially in Oxnard, and this particular election just proved that true again. But I have to say that um, I don't think incumbents, sure they do share name recognition and some political capital, but I have to say if people truly didn't think that they were doing a good job, that they would be coming back. That's I had anticipated that District 6 would probably be a lot closer, but otherwise, no, it pretty much turned out a lot like I think a lot of people thought it would.
Now, during the election night show coverage, you made comments in regards to the city treasurer that the two candidates, the incumbent and the challenger, were ultimately one and the same person. Um, did those results play out exactly what you thought it would?
No, not at all. They didn't. I was fairly certain that Mr. Molina would prevail in that race. I have to say that Mr. Aragon, I was impressed with his performance in our forum. and I saw him with the League of Women Voters as well. I think he held his himself well going up against an incumbent, although they were essentially the similar answers. There was like little contention between either of them or disagreement on any policies. Um, I believe I'd have to look at this. I believe that Mr. Aragon um, might be like the treasurer or something of his political party's local chapter or something. And so he certainly had some good support with those folks. But I didn't think it would be enough to unseat Phil Molina. Again, just looking at how difficult it is to unseat an incumbent to begin with. But I also don't know how many people really were aware of the controversy that happened with Mr. Molina earlier this year. And like I said during the election coverage, I read the actual report. I accessed it through a Public Records Act request, and there were some things that were kind of like, that seems a little, um, some of the things they investigated are like, okay, whatever. But some of them were pretty serious, and to me, it's just interesting that in this day and age, that someone with even no denial on some of those things that happened, that they would be voted back in. But again, I have to give it to the voters. That's what they wanted, and that's where we are.
Now, this election year was an open seat for the city clerk, and you were the one that called that race before anyone else did. How does that make you feel that you were the first one before any news media to call that race?
It feels great. I think I have a great future ahead of me predicting the next like 40 city clerks, like that guy who predicted the presidential race the last 40 years or whatever. So we'll see how that one plays out. I'm 1 for 1 so far.
Now, the mayor's race, this was also an open seat. We had three challengers. Current county supervisor for the 5th District, John Saragosa, chair of the Planning Commission, Deidre Frank, and then community activist, Richard Linares. Did those results come out the way that, did you kind of anticipate the results would be the way that they came out so far?
I thought the standings would turn out the way they did with Mr. Zaragoza coming in with the most votes, followed by Ms. Frank, followed by Mr. Linares. It was kind of I couldn't have predicted what the numbers would have been. It was far in favor of Mr. Zaragoza, and then a respectable second and third by Ms. Frank and Mr. Linares. And I mean, even during our coverage, they all, they ran their campaigns their own way. Mr. Zaragoza's was certainly much more traditional. Miss Frank, obviously has some really great experience under her belt. And Mr. Linares too. I mean, we said it during the coverage that he ran it his way, and it was a fresh look at running a campaign. And yeah, maybe some people disagree with it, but it was his campaign to run. And I have to give respect to anybody who's going to um, try and think out of the box and do things in a different way to bring attention to what they see as a platform and what's important to them.
Now, one of the most anticipated races was for the 5th District county supervisor. It was against Mayor Tim Flynn and Mayor Pro Tem Carmen Ramirez. And during the election night coverage show, you brought up their past challenges when they went against each other back in 2012 when they both ran for mayor when the seat was open, and then their primary numbers, and then even now when you see their numbers and how back in 2012 when you showed those in the primary, Tim was ahead, not by very much, but he was ahead. But pretty much from election night to even now, Carmen has only been increasing that lead over. Did you think that that would happen, that somebody would actually be able to beat Tim Flynn?
I was absolutely surprised by it. And that's not to say that I didn't think Carmen would prevail or that I thought that, Tim would do terrible. That's not, I just really thought it'd be close because every time they've gone up against each other, it was just so close. And I have to give credit to Wendy Leung from the Ventura County Star, because we were kind of talking about it, and she had mentioned, well, remember that in the primary, all of those votes that went to other candidates are now going to go to either Tim or to Carmen. And so we may see a bigger difference in the election results when they come out. And she totally called it. She was right that Carmen prevailed and had a pretty decisive lead over Tim Flynn. And so I thought it was going to be really like a nail biter, where we'd probably still be counting votes right now. But no, I was pleasantly surprised to see it.
So this is going to be a question that I'm pretty sure you're going to be asked if you have not already been asked. But Carmen Ramirez, who was re-elected to her seat at District 2 during the gubernatorial back in 2018, and that seat isn't up for re-election until 2022. Now, you live in her district. If the city council does an appointment to the seat, which residents are really split on this, but here's my opinion on this aspect. An appointment saves the city money. You have candidates that want to try out for that seat, come before the city council, get questioned before the city council, and then the best one that will fit well with the council and the mission and the direction of the city gets the seat, as long as the votes are there. A special election costs the city money, and our city is not in a position to have a special election. Now, if either one of those happen, will you throw your name in there?
I've really been thinking pretty hard about it, even going back into the early part of the election season, because it was always a reality that if Carmen does get elected, she would vacate that seat of the district I live in. And so, as we got closer and closer, I started thinking about it more. And I got to tell you, Daniel, that for me personally, I love what I do. I volunteer all my time. Nobody pays me to do any of this stuff, just so everybody knows. Even like Parks and Rec Commission, even INCO, neighborhood council, like we don't get anything for that. That's all volunteer time, and I love doing it. And looking at my own personal life with my family, and looking at my obligations to my work that I do. Many people may not know that the city council role is a part-time position. They work full-time hours. They do a lot of work, but it is paid, but it's a part-time pay. And I've really had to wrestle with that. Like, if it's not just running for it. It's like, if someone gets elected, can they afford to be elected? Yeah. And to me, this is going to be me getting on a soapbox here for a second, but I feel like that's pretty, that excludes a lot of people in this city who would be great candidates to be on that dais, to be city council members or to be mayor. But can they afford to do a second full-time job and be paid $1,200 a month to do that? Like, is that doable for people? Is that fair to people to ask them to do that? And a city of our size, with the challenges we have, I mean, I feel like we're at a point where we need to start thinking, as the mayor and the council seat, should they be dedicating all of their time to this? Should they be paid to do this as their job, have office hours all day, meet with constituents, go out into the districts, go out to the city? That's just me on my soapbox. That being said, I thought more seriously about it, and I still need to weigh my options. My wife and I have discussed it. We need to see kind of what happens next. But it feels great to have so much support from people throughout the city who've told me privately and sometimes very publicly that I should be really thinking about it. And I truly appreciate the vote of confidence, and that's really helping me in weighing this out.
I guess people can't say I didn't try to get an answer out but then again, I guess it's kind of wrong for me to try to lock you into an answer, but it is always important to weigh your options.
Well, you heard it here first, Daniel. I'm really thinking hard about it.
Well, I'm glad that I'm able to say that I heard it first. So it's another first for for Oxnard Live. So thank you, Gabe, for joining me tonight. Um, we talked about you. We talked about what motivated you to run, not run. Sorry, what motivated you to be part of the city, to dedicate yourself to really help educate our community. It's a real civic engagement and a positive civic engagement that you're doing for our community with all your videos that you post out, that are just factual information, nothing opinionated, but it's just factual and it's appreciated. And I know a lot of residents appreciate it as well. I appreciate you giving your feedback as far as the election results so far. And I appreciate you as a resident being part of the city and everything that you do. So thank you. And I know there are a lot of residents out there that feel the exact same way.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Daniel. And I love that you and some other folks around the city have really tried to engage residents in other mediums as well. So like this show, amazing. I had told you before we went live, I said, hey, I get automatic notifications whenever you go live. So that way I can put it on my phone or, wherever I am, or I can watch it after the fact. So this platform, this type of work, we're in a new age of engaging residents, and there's so much information that's available to people there, and I'm just happy to be part of that. And so I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Well, I appreciate you having those notifications for the show because, every episode is unique and it's a lot of useful information for the residents to take in. So thank you for that. And I can't say enough. Thank you for your service to our community. It's very much appreciated. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, Gabe Teran, the chair of Fremont South neighborhood and second vice chair on the INCO, which is the Inter Neighborhood Council Organization. You can catch all of his videos on YouTube at _GT Pro. Be sure to like or subscribe to his YouTube page so you'll always be in the loop of new videos that are posted. I believe there's a little bell that people can click on so they get
Ring
notified.
that bell, folks.
Ring the bell. There you go. Thank you again, Gabe. Be sure to join us next week as we have Chief of Police Scott Whitney joining us at 4 p.m. right here on Oxnard Live. We'll be talking about his experience with the city over his 30-plus year career with the city of Oxnard and his retirement in next month in December. So be sure to join us right here on Oxnard Live at 4 p.m. Also, be sure to visit our website, oxnardlive.net. You can see all of our upcoming guests and past videos from our first series and then even our current series right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dan Chavez Jr. This is Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real. Have a great night, and thank you again, Gabe.
Thank you.